Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the 5th episode of How to Avalanche at Home. With this video, I'm going to do a getting started tutorial where I take a base installation of Linux, download the Avalabs provided Avalanche binary, use that to start my node, and then connect it to the test network, and then using Postman, which is the API interaction tool that I talked about in the previous video, I will be going through the entire getting started tutorial. Basically, this will be a way for you to understand how the node works, how you can use Postman to experiment with it, and do your experiments in the test network. Ultimately, if and when you are ready to do this in the mainnet, this tutorial will provide you all the context you need so that you will actually know what you're doing. All right, before we begin, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that every time we produce a video like this, you will actually get a notification. And also, if this content is useful to you, if you like to see more like this, please go ahead and like the video and place any comments that you may have down in the comments section below so that I can read them and I can decide what to shoot next. With that said, let's jump right in. So let's start with a node installation. What you're seeing right now is a Raspberry Pi that's in my closet that already has Ubuntu installed on it. And if I list the contents in my homepage, as you can, in my home directory, as you can see, there's literally nothing else that's installed relating to Avalanche. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the avalabs.org webpage, and we're going to click Build. Then we're going to go to Getting Started. In there, we're actually going to scroll down to the binary section. This is the section where they describe how you can download the appropriate file and run your node. So there is a link to the releases page. I'm going to click that, which will take me to the latest release and the distribution associated with that release. For me specifically, I actually need the ARM64 package because I'm running a Raspberry Pi. If you're doing this on a laptop, you're most likely going to need the AMD 64 one, but please make sure to pay attention here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of downloading it to my computer, I'm going to right click and click the copy link address. Then I'm going to go back to my node and I'm simply going to run wget and that link. When I do this, it will actually download that distribution onto my computer. If I list using ls-ltra, you can see that the file has been downloaded. This is a compressed file, so we need to do tar -xvf to unzip this file basically. That will take a second, and there it is. Now you are actually seeing an Avalanche directory in there. So if I actually go into that directory and do another list, you will actually see the plugins as well as the binary. Now, most of you know, to launch the binary, all you really have to do normally is this, but because we actually want to first connect to the test network for the purposes of this demo, I need to enter a network ID equals Fuji. Now, this is only for connecting to the test network. If you don't use this parameter, it will automatically connect to mainnet. So when you finish this tutorial and when you decide you're ready for mainnet, you will simply remove this parameter. And the other thing that I need to do is actually enable the HTTP interface by doing --http-host and entering my local network IP address so that the admin interface, the HTTP interface that Postman is going to connect to is enabled. So when I do this and press enter, this should simply launch the node. Because it's launching for the first time, it will take a second or two, but what it should do is it should initialize. It's actually going to tell me the ports that I need to know. In this case, the port that I'm going to need to know for using it with Postman is 9650. And then as you can see, it already started bootstrapping. I'm going to speed this part of the video up because bootstrap may take a little while, and then we're going to jump into Postman installation next. All right, while the node is bootstrapping, let's go ahead and download Postman. The address that you need to navigate to is postman.com downloads. Click the download option. I will select 64-bit because that's what my computer is running. The file will take a second. Click so that it will install. Now, Postman, as I mentioned earlier, is a graphical user interface which will allow you to define and create methods to talk to your node. And, we actually have it much easier because the Avalabs team, specifically Gabriel from the team, already created what we call the collection of methods that we're going to use, as well as an example environment file for us to use with it. So Postman just launched. As you can see, this is what it looks like. What we're going to add here is we're going to download the Avalabs collection and we're going to download the example environment. I will explain what they are after the download. So let's first navigate to Gabriel's webpage on GitHub. It is github.com/cgcardona. Click repositories and click Avalanche Postman collection. Now, I'm a little bit lazy. I'm not going to use Git to download the stuff. We just really need these two files. So I'm going to click on the first file called Avalanche Postman collection. That will bring up the code. The easiest way to get the code there is basically click raw and then Control A to select everything. Right click, copy, minimize, go to your desktop, create a text file, call it collection.json, and then paste the contents in here and then save the file. Okay, let's go back to the web page, back one more time. That was the first file. We need the second file, which is the example environment. Again, I click on it, then I go to raw, Control A to select everything, right click, copy, and then go to the desktop, say new text file environment.json, open it up, right click, paste, and save. That is pretty much it. Now we have downloaded the code. What we need to do is import them into Postman. So let's go ahead and do that. Once you launch Postman, you have an import button up top. Click that, and then just upload the files from your desktop. These are the two files. You can select both of them by doing Control click. And once you upload them, it will actually identify what each of them is. One of them is a collection, the other one is an environment. So import. Now you can see that there is a collection called Avalanche under the collections tab. History has stuff and APIs, I don't have any APIs yet, so that's pretty much it. On the collections is what you expect this Avalanche stuff to show up as. Now, the other thing that you should also notice is on the top right, it says no environment. However, if you click on it, you're also going to see an example environment. And I'm going to select that for the time being. Now, next step is to configure these things, but again, I'm waiting for the bootstrap. As soon as I have the bootstrap done, we're going to jump in, do the configuration, and we're going to start talking to our node. All right, guys, the bootstrap is complete. The test network bootstrap is considerably faster. There's less many transactions, so once you launch the node, it doesn't take that long. And let's just go ahead and configure our Postman for use. Now, let me just start by explaining what these things are. So the top level Avalanche directory is the collection. Under that, you're going to have a bunch of other directories, I guess we can call them sub-collections, which correspond to separate APIs that are within the Avalanche node software, if you will. Now, if we go back to the Getting Started tutorial, once you finish the sections relating to launching the node, you will notice this is the first command that it's suggesting to use with your node to check if the specific chain X chain is bootstrapped. So what we're going to do, normally you would do this by copying and pasting this into the command line terminal, but we're going to use Postman for it. So let's just go ahead and configure Postman first. Now, to configure, actually before the configuration, let me also show you the isBootstrapped command. So isBootstrapped is under the info directory and it is called isBootstrapped. If you double click on it, it's going to launch a new window, if you will. And if you click body, it will show you the actual method and the parameters that are being passed in. If you compare this to the web page, you're going to notice that it's almost exactly the same, with the exception that this curl stuff as well as this stuff at the end is not visible. That's what Postman does. Postman ultimately allows you to create these pieces in a variable fashion. And let me dig into that. So we already have the command, as you can see. What we now need to do is give meaning to these variables up top. Variables are defined with these brackets. So basically it's saying you have a variable called HTTP, and every time I press send, whatever what my environment has set is going to replace that HTTP variable with the actual value I set to it. So let's go ahead and set a value. You need to click the Manage Environments on the top right, then click on the example environment, and you're going to see all of the variables that are actually defined here. Now, HTTP stays as is. Host is localhost. This would work right out of the box if the node was running on the same computer that I'm running Postman on. However, as I mentioned earlier, my node is a Raspberry Pi within my local network, but it's not on this computer. So I actually have to enter my IP address here. The IP address that my router assigned this time around is this. You need to find this basically and enter it. And for the time being, I'm not going to touch any of the other variables, and I'm going to click update. Now, once I say update, it's now going to have meaning. If you hover over the host, it will now know that the host will actually, when the command is sent, will translate to this IP address. Now that we've entered my host, I mentioned this earlier in the video as well, the port is 9650, that's the default port. I should be able to send this command and I should be able to receive a response. Let's go ahead and do it. And there it is. So basically I asked the node, is the X chain bootstrapped? The answer I received is true. If I wanted to check if the P chain is bootstrapped, I would replace this X here, click send, and boom, I receive another response, true. So that is pretty much it. At this point, we are ready to start going through the getting started tutorial. What we're going to do is we're going to read the instructions. Then instead of copying and pasting those commands into the terminal, we will use Postman and we will use this collection to do step by step. All right, now that we have the configuration ready to go, let's start with this quick start tutorial. So we already started our node. We already ran our is bootstrapped command. We already know it's bootstrapped. So the place that I'm starting with is creating a key store user. Now, the way to translate these instructions into what we have in Postman is very simple. Every method that you see on this tutorial is going to have two pieces. The first piece is going to be called key store, basically the stuff that's to the left of the dot. That will correspond to one of the sub-collections that you have in Postman. Basically, if I'm looking for key store, I should see a key store directory. I'm going to collapse info, and there it is. There's key store. If I expand it, then I'm looking for create user. So let's go ahead and double-click create user. And if you want to see the command, click body. And the important thing here is you will notice an Avalanche username and you will notice an Avalanche password. As you can see, these are actually variables. So we need to go back into our environment because we are creating it for the first time. We need to be defining them in here. So let's go ahead and say, I'm going to be fancy and I'm going to be using the nickname for the channel. And then password, it just needs to be something strong. Let's just make this up and put that in. So I'm going to replace both of these in here, and then I'm going to click update. Okay. Now these variables do actually have meaning. Postman will know to translate them into something else. So if I send this command, it will basically be equivalent to what it's suggesting here, and we should be seeing this type of a response. Let's go ahead and do it. And as you can see, what it did is it took the username I defined in my environment, it took the password I defined in my environment, spoke to my node and said, go ahead and actually create that user. The other cool thing that you can do is if you go back to the node, you will actually notice some of the calls that you're making into the node are also printed in the log. So basically, when we created the user, you can see a log print that says create user method was called with FireStorm as the value. All right, so we now have our user created. Let's go ahead and create an address. Again, the way to parse these and figure out which command to run is we're looking for the AVM directory. So I'm going to collapse that. I'm actually going to kill these two that I've done before. I'm not going to save changes. I'm going to go into AVM. That's what I was looking for. And then the second part is create address. So we're going to want to go to create address. If you click on body, all it really needs in terms of variables is your username and password. What it's going to do is it's going to create an address for the username and password that you just created. Because we already defined them and they are saved in the environment, you can simply click send, and boom, it just created an X address for us to use. What we now need to do is take that X address, copy it, so that we can update our environment file with that address. If you click on Manage Environments again, go into here, you will notice that there's an Xchain address variable. This already had a sample value in there. We're going to delete that, and I'm going to put that new address that it created. The other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete all these other things just because these are examples and I don't want to get confused later. So I'm going to delete all of this stuff. Everything that we need, we will create as a part of this tutorial anyways. So I'm going to just delete these out, which obviously takes a second. Almost done right here. And that's it. Once I click update, now I should only have my username, my password, and basically the new address I created. That's it. Close. All right, now that we have the address, basically what we need to do is send some funds to this address, which actually lives on the node. Because we are actually in the test network, I'm actually going to use the faucet, which the Avalabs team created. It's basically a service that in the test network, it mints Avalanche tokens, AVAX tokens, and simply sends it to the address that you select. I will go back. Here's my address. I will copy it one more time. I will go back to the faucet. I will paste it. I'm not a robot. All right, it has a security feature. And once you confirm you're not a robot, you can just request AVAX, and that AVAX should appear quickly in your address. Let's see what we're doing next. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is check to make sure that the faucet did actually send that amount, and that amount is actually visible in our address. The way to do that is going to be AVM get balance. So let's go to AVM, and there should be a get balance right here. Again, you click body to see the contents of the command. So the two things that it needs is an Xchain address and AVAX asset ID. If I do send right now, because our AVAX asset ID variable is not defined, I kind of wanted to show you what an error would also look like. And we just need to go into our environment and define what that AVAX asset ID is. So the asset ID in this case is going to be AVAX. So we're simply going to paste that in, update, and let's go ahead and close, and let's resend it. And now you can see that we did actually receive that one AVAX, which is represented in a different denomination here, into the address that we had created. And that basically concludes the get balance part. All right. And the response pretty much aligns with what the getting started tutorial shows. So we also have the ability to send. We can create another address on the node by going through the create address and then running the send command to see it sending from one address to the other. I'm not going to cover this part. I'm going to let you do it. Basically, you need to find the AVM directory, use the send command, make sure the contents, i.e. the parameters, are appropriate, and make sure you send it from the first address you created into the second one. And please let me know how it goes. All right, next up, I'm going to create a wallet. I'm going to send the AVAX that's currently sitting on the address that we created on the node to the wallet. Then from the wallet, using the standard Avalanche wallet interface, I'm going to stake those tokens into the test node that we're currently running. So the first things first, we need to navigate to wallet.avax.network. Again, because we're operating in the test network, I'm going to click on mainnet here and I'm going to choose Fuji. It's going to switch me to the test network. I'm going to go ahead and say create new wallet. It will ask me if I want to create a key phrase. Absolutely, that's the thing. And these are the words that it's creating. For the purposes of this demo, I will store these on a notepad file. I highly suggest you don't do that. So test wallet. I'm going to store them here. And let's go ahead and access our wallet. So it's going to ask me some of the words. So the fourth word is hunt. Fifth word is rookie. Sixth word is pretty. Seventh word is hidden. The one after black is hero. And that's it. Once I verify, it will actually let me access the node. Click access node, it's loading. And there it is. We just created a new wallet. Remember, those 24 words that you saw, particularly for mainnet, you should not write them on a computer. You should either store them outside of your computer, or you should store them in a wallet like Ledger, which is a hardware wallet. For the purposes of this demo, we're already in test network anyway, so I'm demonstrating how to create it regardless. All right, so the X address for this wallet is right here. I can simply copy it. Then we can go back to Postman, and we can simply, by the way, while during the transition, I did actually request more AVAX from the faucet. So if I run the get balanced again, you can see that my balance has increased. So let's go ahead and do a send transaction into the wallet. If I double click send, click body, it will actually have a to address. So I'm going to replace that with the address that I pasted from my wallet. Notice here. And then the amount that I want to send is, let's actually take this balance here and decrement it by 1. That's basically 4 AVAX. Let's go ahead and send it. I'm not going to put a memo. We're sending, this doesn't really matter. And I will send. And there it is. We now have a transaction ID. We actually can check this transaction if you want by clicking on get transaction status, body, and type the transaction ID in there. Whoops, what did I do there? So if I copy this, copy, then go into transaction status and just replace this with that and send, we should see accepted. That means that amount of AVAX should have already went. So if I refresh the balance, now I actually see the 4 AVAX in there. From this point on, it's pretty simple, but let's go ahead and double check that getting started tutorial actually doesn't have any additional steps here. Okay, we actually need to know our node ID, which is a good point. Again, you can do this through Postman. So you can go to Postman and get node ID, I believe, is under info. Yep, you would just look at info and then get node ID. So if you double click that, body is not really going to have much in there. So let's go ahead and send this command. And this right here is our node ID. So when we are staking through the wallet, we're going to need to know this node ID. Now that we know our node ID, it says go to your wallet and go to the staking section. So first, let's go back to our wallet, which is right here, and then click on earn. Now, important point. Right now, the AVAX that we sent to our wallet is sitting on the X chain. For you to stake these AVAX tokens, you need to be switching these tokens from the X chain onto the P chain, and that's what's called a cross-chain transfer. So before we can have the validate option enabled, we need to do the cross-chain transfer. So I'm going to click transfer. It's going to bring me to the simple interface. I'm actually going to transfer as much as I can. If I click max, it's going to remove the amount of transaction fee that I need to pay, and it's going to automatically calculate it. This doesn't need to change because we're sending from X to P. I'm simply going to confirm, transfer, and it's exporting. My export was accepted. Then it imported onto the P chain, and as you can see, that import also worked. Now, if you look at the breakdown, you should no longer see any amount in the X chain, and all of your amount is now in the P chain. Let's click earn one more time. Now you will notice that the validate and delegate options are enabled. Delegation in mainnet is for people who have less than 2,000 tokens at the time of this video. And if you have less than 2,000, you have no means of getting 2,000. That's the option for you. It's going to have less many things to select, but it's equivalent to validating in terms of earning a reward and in terms of securing the network. Because we have a node, because we have enough amount for the test network, I'm going to click on Add Validator. In the test network, you simply need one AVAX so that you can stake it. Now, you will notice that the node ID section is empty. Let's go back to Postman. This was our node ID. Let's go ahead and copy it. Go back to the wallet, paste it in there. Boom, we now have our node ID. Now, the minimum that you need to stake in mainnet is 2 weeks. The maximum you can do is 1 year. I'm going to do, let's say I'm going to do until end of February. I'm arbitrarily selecting that. You know, it's just longer than 2 weeks. And I want to stake the maximum amount, which is basically 3.998. And the wallet, the earn interface will automatically actually show me the duration and how much in estimated rewards I will receive. The other piece that you need to pay attention to is called delegation fee. This is once you start staking with your node for the duration, other people can choose to use your node as a node to delegate onto. This is the amount of fee that you would charge from their earnings if they choose to delegate with your node. So I'm going to leave that at 2, and that's pretty much it. There is one additional option here. If you wanted this reward, 0.06 reward, to hit a different address or a different p-chain address than the default one that we're using, you can click custom and you can, enter it here. I'm not going to do that. And that is pretty much it. Now that we've selected these things, I can simply confirm and I can submit. And that's it. The transaction is committed. The amount that I was seeing available under P now moved from P to staking. And basically start time is 04:13. We're not quite there yet, but within a minute, the node will start staking. And I'm going to demonstrate that it's working through one of the explorers. All right, the start time has passed. Let's copy our node ID one more time. Actually, before I copy the node ID, I'm going to navigate to the explorer that I use. I typically use vScout, which is one of the explorers that is available for the Avalanche blockchains, basically. Make sure you have Fuji testnet selected here. If you actually go to this address for the first time, it's going to be on mainnet, but go ahead and select Fuji testnet. Then go back to your Postman. Get your node ID one more time, and then navigate to vScout. If you scroll down a little bit, it actually has the list of all the validators running in the test network. If you simply paste your node ID into the search box right here, if you've successfully managed to get your node staking, it will actually pull it up, and you can click on it to see its current status. In fact, you can click on the node ID, which will bring it onto a standalone window. What you're going to see is it's going to show you the location of where the node is, its version, how much you actually staked, and if anybody delegated, how much they delegated, as well as other metrics. Like there is a progress bar that shows you when the end time is going to be basically, and what percentage of the duration you have staked for already. Let's see. We also have an uptime counter, which is important. If you remember, for you to receive any rewards for the validation work that you're doing for the duration that you choose, your node needs to be at least 60% up out of the entire duration. So it's a very good practice to log on to these explorers to double check and make sure that your node is seen by the others in the network as up and connected. That's pretty much it. At this point, we have our node, we installed our node, we used Postman, we created a wallet, and we've successfully staked onto our node. All right, guys, that is it for this video. Please do let me know how you get on, how you like the tutorial, how you like Postman, and let me know if you have any feedback down in the comment section below. Otherwise, again, if this video was helpful to you, please go ahead and like, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel so that every time we produce a video like this, you will get a notification. Otherwise, I'm going to see you guys in the next video. See ya.